Welcome, everyone. Delegates, guests, candidates, of course, Liz. Thank you all so much for being here for yet another stellar Libertarian Party of Texas presidential debate. As you know, first of all, thank you to everyone who made this possible. Obviously, all of the staff, you know who you are. Thank you so much. Donors, candidates, everything that you've done to get to this point. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
We're really glad to have you here. As you know, we will have 4 candidates with us this evening, and the debate will be moderated by Liz Wolfe, Associate Editor at Reason. So Liz's work includes topics related to sex work, tattooing, tech, restaurant industry, venture capitalism, et cetera, and her work has appeared in Playboy, The Daily Beast, and lots of major metropolitan newspapers. She has appeared on multiple Fox Business programs and is, I assume, still a recurring guest on the Hill's YouTube show, Rising. Before I turn things over to Liz, because she's going to be in charge of this thing here shortly, I do want to announce our sponsor, Dr. Charles Ballet, who is, yes, also a Libertarian candidate for president. And I am now going to read a statement from our sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow delegates of the Texas Libertarian Party, my name is Dr. Charles Ballet, and though I am not featured in tonight's debate, I am here as a passionate candidate for the Libertarian nomination for president. If I have not met you yet, I look forward to meeting you at some opportunity during this convention. I am deeply rooted in this state. I met my wife, Lisa, here. She's from Bourne. Our children attend high school and college in Texas, Tybee and TCU. Our oldest now lives in Georgetown. I trained at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, and I served as an otolaryngology physician in Kerrville, Texas, for many years. Though now moved to my home in New Orleans, my career has been a testament to the power of helping others, individual choice, and professional autonomy, core principles that resonate deeply with libertarian values. As we champion such causes as ballot access, the need for third-party inclusion, and the drastic reduction in government interference in personal and economic lives, our party must understand that inclusion, not exclusion, will attract open-minded people to look for solutions. We must reflect that there are an overwhelming number of people in this great country who understand that limited government equates to more individual empowerment, innovation, and a more robust economy. Yet said people are not registered as libertarians. Why? An overwhelming contingent of Americans indeed want a government that protects one's freedoms, but at the same time does not suffocate America's potential with excessive regulation and oversight. An overwhelming number of people are sick of vehement political rhetoric, which is destroying our country and youth. Attracting and including these disenfranchised individuals will create a more powerful libertarian party and movement. I believe it is a matter of framing the conversation, and that proper messaging can guide these disenfranchised individuals to our party. I believe in our cause and the power of numbers, and with added people, we can achieve our goals. This belief guides my vision of the presidential office. America needs a healer. My platform focuses on fiscal responsibility, the protection of personal freedoms, and a foreign policy emphasizing non-intervention. I stand for a healthcare system free of bureaucratic entanglement, where patients and providers make decisions without government intrusion. You can find out more about Dr. Ballet at ballet2024.com. Please let us be the party that not only talks about these freedoms, but actively embodies them in our practices. It is crucial that every voice, regardless of its volume or the extent of its connections, contributes to our dialogue and decision-making processes. Third parties need a voice. Individuals need a voice. Echo chambers are the antithesis of democracy and the downfall of democratic ideals. Such inclusivity will enrich our debates and strengthen our resolve as we work towards a more accessible, prosperous, and peaceful society. Thank you all for your dedication to these principles and for the opportunity to share my vision with you today. Together, we can forge a future reflecting libertarian ideals of liberty, minimal government, and peaceful, principled diplomacy. Again, I look forward to meeting every one of you. Dr. Ballet will he's here. Go ahead and stand up. He's here. Thank you for sponsoring the debate. And of course, he will be here and available immediately following this this particular hour and a half at our meet and greet. So those of you who are ticketed to attend that, he'll be there for you. And without further ado, I turn things over to Liz Wolfe.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so for Reason, I write the morning newsletter, Reason Roundup, and I also co-host the show Just Asking Questions on our YouTube channel. We've interviewed all kinds of people, from Thomas Massey to Dave Smith, so I have lots of experience wrangling all kinds of big thinkers and politicians. I'm very excited to share the stage with you guys here tonight. A few notes of housekeeping. I'm going to try, to my very best ability, to keep things brief, concise, entertaining for all of you good people, and also ideally very informative. So I have no buzzer, I have no true ability to cut off your microphone access, but I may or may not be interrupting you guys if you guys end up going far too long. Please aim to keep all answers 2 minutes or under, because I want to make sure that we're excellent at sharing the stage with others and being as charitable as possible. The aim here is entertaining our audience and also really giving them useful information that they can make future decisions based off of. So, on that note...
Point of question, ma'am, you said politicians and big thinkers. That wasn't like politicians and other big thinkers, but two different groups.
So, normally on presidential campaigns, candidates trot out a whole list of things that they would do on day one in office. Generally, it's executive orders that libertarians aren't especially fond of. Every once in a while, they talk about granting clemency. Every once in a while, they use executive orders to slash regulations. But what would each of you do on day one in office? We'll start at the very end.
Good evening. I'm Michael Rectenwald, and I'm running for president as a Libertarian. Hello, Texas. And so, thank you. I am running on a platform of maximum liberty, and that is the strategy of decentralization, and I'm running as an anarcho-capitalist. So I believe that we need to represent maximum liberty to the American people as a lodestar towards which we aim. And if we have that lodestar in vision, we cannot go wrong. As a president, should I be so miraculously endowed with that position, I would, of course, aim immediately to end all of the intelligence agencies, the whole apparatus, all of it, CIA, FBI, NSA, and then going down the line, TSA, but furthermore, the DOE, the CDC, you name it, I would get rid of them. I think that what we're living under is the most onerous, oppressive, and the largest state in the history of humanity. This federal government is an outrage. It's a total behemoth, and that it is crushing the lifeblood out of the people of this country. We need to overcome this, and so the way to do it is through decentralization and resistance at the local level. We must get power locally, and I'm running to be the beacon of that message not only of decentralization, but ultimately full private property society and a full-on anarcho-capitalist order. That is what I'm running on, and I make no apologies for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll also want to keep clapping to a minimum and just assume that there's some amount of endorsement from some number of people in the audience, but I think that will help us sort of move ahead.
How many minutes?
Next one. We're going to try to do 2 and under.
All right. Thank you, Texas. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Look, there's only one path for us to reach the presidency of the United States, and it's a real long shot. And that is to cause a contingent election and send it to the House of Representatives, where the House of Representatives could pick a libertarian presidential candidate. This is really not going to happen because there's winner-take-all laws, there's gerrymandering, there's ballot access issues. The complete system is rigged, and that's what I'm running on, is to unrig the system. We can't affect change. We can't do the things that we would want to do on the first day of office if we can't even reach office. So I have put forth the Voters' Bill of Rights, which puts forth ballot access laws that are equal and fair for both Democrats, Republicans, and any other comer. It allows us to audit our vote, and so any citizen can audit the vote. And so there's a bunch of pieces of policy you can reach on lars24.com. But what I'm trying to do is something different. I'm trying to cause this contingent election. I'm trying to get national attention for the Libertarian Party. And I'm starting right now. I've been working actively getting 800,000 views a day on my Twitter ads, getting our message out there that this is possible. I'm working in Nebraska and Maine because those are two states that split their electoral vote. And I think this is totally achievable. We only need to win 250,000 votes in Maine or Nebraska in order to win an electoral vote. And on CNN recently, they were talking about 269 to 269 electoral votes, and that one electoral vote might cause a change. After being on Smerconish last week, Donald Trump called up the governor of Nebraska and said, I want to get rid of the split electoral vote. Literally after I'm talking on Smerconish about doing this thing. They had a vote in Nebraska to get rid of it. It failed, okay? But it's clear that I am on their radar and they're paying attention to me. And that is because I have been in 12 national polls, which other presidents haven't done. Please go to Lars24.com, check out my plan to unrig the system and cause a contingent election.
But that's not an answer to day one in office.
Because why would we even talk about day one in office when there's very little chance that we'll get there? I mean, I can talk more
Your
about...
words, not mine.
I can talk more about how I would... there's a thing called the Plum Book, which offers 7,000 positions that the president gets to pick. I would not place any of those 7,000 positions, which would be 35,000 bureaucratic positions that would be eliminated. If Congress thinks that those positions are important, they can create those positions. But I think the president has way too much power, and one of the things I would do as president is reduce the power of president, return to Congress the power that they give up because they don't want to do their damn job.
Thank you. Next. No clapping. Don't even think about it. Don't break my rules already.
Don't even think about it.
Yes?
Look, the big difference between my campaign and the other campaigns vying to represent the Libertarian Party is that we are in this to actually disrupt the duopoly. If we leave American politics unchanged after my campaign, I will owe each and every one of you and each and every one of you on this stage a huge apology. We are designing this campaign to run with the absolute competitive credibility required to take it to the Republican and the Democratic nominees. We are not in this with a gimmick. We're not in this to try to throw it into some weird vote in the House of Representatives. We are not in it to compete in one particular district or another. We are in this to actually run a competitive campaign. The reason I believe that we can do that is because in the past, our Libertarian candidates have been able to achieve double digits in the polls, but they did not run a sufficiently principled campaign to hang on to that. I won't make that mistake. You are familiar with the Gold New Deal, the platform I'm running on. You can read about it at goldnewdeal.org, by the way. This is a transformational collection of ideas to give us a brand new relationship between us and the government that we will tolerate. We lean very hard, not only into the professionalism of our campaign team. We have 20 professionals on our team now because we're actually ready to go for the general election. But we also lean hard into my personal background in public service and in public policy. The difference between my day one in office and someone else's day one in office is I've been there. I spent 2 years working as an economist for the White House. I know the tricks of it. I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to answer this question. But the answer is that you've got to start out, yes, with some executive orders, making an enormous amount of federal regulations subject to the approval of state governors. You have got to make an enormous number of phone calls, especially to our European allies, that says, whatever your plan B was, it's now your plan A, because it's not an ethical proposition in the view of this White House, in the view of this administration, to take money away from people around the United States and to use it to project military hegemony in other parts of the world just because you people don't want to spend the money that you feel is necessary to protect yourselves. There's going to be a new sheriff in town, and those phone calls are going to get made. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Howdy, Texas. I'm happy to be back here. So what would I do on day one if I were elected president? Well, what most libertarians would do. I'm going to start off by pardoning Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Ross Ulbricht, Leonard Peltier, and any candidate or any prisoner who's currently in federal prison for a nonviolent victimist crime, sex work, drug possession, any of those things. We're going to start freeing them immediately. Then I imagine a libertarian president will give a barn burner of a speech talking about how we're going to dismantle the war machine piece by piece, talking about how we're going to return sovereignty back into each and every individual, how we're going to hold government and its law enforcement and its judicial system accountable to representing the people and not government when we get into a courtroom. There's lots of things a libertarian president could do to push those ideas forward. But the truth is we have to build our party's foundation up in order to get there. And that's the kind of campaign I'm running right now. I'm about to be in all 50 states. I'll be the first Libertarian candidate for president to ever campaign in all 50 states, and I'm doing that before I'm even the nominee. Why? Because I believe it's important for every voter out there to see an alternative on their ballot, to see that there's somebody who's not part of the broken two-party system. And to build our party foundation up, we need to do things like earning ballot access in states all over the country, just like the state of Georgia, where I'm from. We need to do it by earning major party status in a state like Iowa. When they got major party status, that's what got me as a Libertarian on the soapbox stage at the Iowa State Fair, the first time that's ever happened. If we build our party foundation up, we can elect hundreds of local Libertarians all over the country and get them started so we can start building up our bench. But I'm committed to you. If I'm our nominee, whether I win or lose in November, I'm committing myself to maintaining, doubling our membership and holding it for the next 4 years, so whoever gets on this stage 4 years from now has twice as many donors, twice as many activists, and twice as many people ready to get on the ground and help them win. That's the commitment I'm making to you right now. Maybe a Libertarian president doesn't win in 2024, but if we do the work of building our party foundation up while we tear the state down brick by brick, we will have a Libertarian president in the future. I guarantee you that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I want to make sure that our answers stay concise in the future. But there's an interesting, cleavage forming here, which is a belief about, what the long shot presidential campaign is really for. I am certainly of the opinion that long shot presidential campaigns aren't really about winning office per se, but they are sometimes a way to really affect our national political discourse and get a few ideas, typically only 1 or 2 ideas, in front of a mass audience. Starting at the very end, once again, as concise as possible, what are the 1 or 2 ideas that you need every person in America to internalize, to care about, to have on their radar now?
The state is a parasite. That's number 1. The state is nothing but a blood-sucking parasite that draws the lifeblood out of people. So what I would say that the thing that I would run on here is not limited government. I'm running on a bigger vision than limited government. That excites absolutely no one. Absolutely no one gets excited about limited government. Mm-hmm. That is a Republican-sounding term, and it has actually no valence, no energy behind it. I think we need to model ourselves after what we just saw in this world. Javier Milei, who won a national election as president of Argentina. This is the kind of campaign that we need. We need to wake people up. We're talking about a somnambulist state. People are in a stupor. They need to be woken up with a strong, bold message. And that message is not limited government. That won't get us there. We need to get there with bold messaging and no apologies for it. This will get people's attention. I have been on the national stage, on Tucker Carlson, all of these things, free publicity. I don't have to pay for it. And so I think that we need to get this message out there, and I am uniquely positioned to get it because I have the largest reach outside of this party. That just happens to be the fact. Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, the number one thing that I would like to have happen after my campaign is over is that we all focus on the Voters' Bill of Rights, that we return integrity to our election system. Right now, people are disenfranchised, people are pissed off in America, people don't feel like they're represented at all. I've been voting all my life, and I have yet to ever elect a congressperson that has won that I voted for. I do not feel represented in America today. And what we need to do is we need to allow more voices and more choices on our American presidential stage so that we can have better options than Donald Trump and Joe Biden again. My whole life, it seems like I was voting for Bush and Clinton, and it's just a repeat of this thing. We're being lied to completely by our government. We're being completely forced into this duopoly. We have the illusion of choice, and I want to break this free so that America actually has a choice. Because when we don't have a choice, we end up with George Floyd riots, and we end up with January 6th. And if we continue down this road, America is going to be splintered. We cannot have a functioning republic if we do not have free and fair elections that we trust. And that's what my Voters' Bill of Rights is all about. Go to lars24.com and check it out. Thank you.
Thanks very much. It may be true that a presidential campaign representing the Libertarian Party has an unlikely chance of winning. It is not true, however, that the best strategy with which to prosecute that campaign is to raise your hand and say, I can't win. If you raise your hand and you say, I can't win, you have just taken away the one reason anyone in the United States has any reason to pay attention to you. This is not a philosophy seminar. This is a competition. If you take yourself out of the competition, you take yourself out of the ability to present your ideas. And our ideas, you asked for one or two. Number one, the federal government of the United States is going to go bankrupt. This is not a prediction. I'm just telling you as a professional economist that that is going to take place, and it's going to take place before the middle of the century. I say this not because I'm so good at predicting the future, but after 4 university degrees, I can add. This is going to happen. The only chance we have of turning that around is to end the enormous amount of federal spending that we make on entitlement programs. We need to reel in how much we spend on defense. The reason this is important is not because you would miss the federal government, neither would I. It's not like this organization adds any value to our lives. The problem is that if it brings down the debt market, it brings down the dollar. And that's a depression economically, worldwide, that we should not be tolerating just because we have a stupid government.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So if there's one idea I can impress upon people, it's that if we don't fix the problems, our future is done for. The next generation is done for. Our kids are going to live in a world with $50 trillion of debt and hyperinflation if we don't start balancing the budget now and start paying down the debt. If we don't start fixing the education system, we're going to raise another generation of kids who are institutionalized to think that government is the solution and not the problem in this country. If we don't end the war machine right here and now, we risk another generation being sent to go fight in wars and go die for BS reasons that are put forward by the intelligence agency, just like the war on terror and the war in Iraq. So what do I want to put out there is that if we don't start changing course now, we will eventually get to a point where we can't change course and where we will fail as a nation. And so if I can put that idea out there as a presidential candidate, that freedom is the future and the future is freedom, that's the idea that I want to put out there. But if we talk about what we've already done, when I ran for Senate, when I forced the runoff between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock, I ran in the runoff on one idea only: ranked choice voting. We need ranked choice voting to fix our system, to make elections less expensive than runoffs. And guess what? Before I forced the runoff, ranked choice voting was about 5% of the vote in Georgia. It shot up over 25 points after I made that point after forcing the runoff. So when we put a thumb in the eye of the duopoly, we get that outsized influence and we need to take advantage of it. And I will use that as a candidate for president to talk about ending the war machine both here and abroad and fixing our economy so that our children have some sort of semblance of a future.
Thank you. Now that we've sort of warmed up a little bit, I want to shake it up from this order and switch to a sort of hand-raising order. I imagine everybody will sort of raise their hands at once, but I will do my best to honor the order in which hands are raised, because I do feel like this format is awfully predictable. People sort of know how things are going to go. So we want to make it a little bit more anarchic, in a sense. Next question. Record numbers of voters call themselves independents and express their discontent with the 2 major parties. Pew polling data indicates that independents tend to skew a little bit younger and a little bit more male. Let's just, for the sake of argument, call me young, and I would like each of you to make your pitch to me, the stand-in young voter. Assume I'm not even a libertarian, I'm more of a normie or a moderate. What is the way that you would message to that young person who may or may not currently be clamoring to have Joe Biden forgive their student loans? Yep, Michael?
Okay, so I'm going to go first again. So look, I was an educator for 20 years, 25 I think it was actually.
Wait, make your pitch directly to me.
Oh, to you. You're
Yes,
a young person.
yes.
Yes, you are young, Liz. Relatively, yes, definitely. Listen, I know the kind of indoctrination you've gone under in the university system.
Now I'm immediately defensive.
You're what?
Now I'm defensive.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just going to say, I'll reel you in.
Sounds good.
Listen, I know what has been pummeled at you, what's been propagated in your direction, what are the kinds of things you've been taught. But I can tell you that it's been wrong, because I used to think just like that, like many of your professors. I know exactly where they're coming from, and I know where you might be coming from. I think you need to understand that what we really deal with, the real exploiter, the real oppressor, is not capitalism as such. It is not the free market. That isn't our enemy, because that's free production and free exchange. It is that entity, that only entity that can rob you, that can coerce money out of you at the point of a gun. That is our real enemy. That is the state. That's what we need to oppose. Capitalism is not the problem. The free market would do well without the state's interference. In fact, it is what creates these monopolies that you probably hate. It is what creates the tilted economic situation that you probably face. It is what has created all of the onerous debt that you're going to definitely be shouldering. And unfortunately, that message hasn't been delivered on a college campus. And I intend to do so. I will be speaking to the young Americans across the country for liberty, across the country, and giving this message. This will really get to the students.
Yes. Next, Chase.
So if you're a young person, I imagine you have a lot of anxiousness about getting into the real world, buying your first house, starting a family, doing all these things. And let me tell you right now, for my generation, the government really screwed the pooch on it. They sent my generation to go fight in wars all over the world, and we're still suffering from the physical and mental ailments from that. You know, the government, they completely bailed out banks while they left the regular guys screwed in 2008. That's right when I was getting out of school, and it made it really difficult to really get that start up. And so if I'm a candidate for president, when I think about what you're going to be needing as you start out in the world, you need a world that's more free. You need a world that has more choice for you. And let me tell you right now, the libertarian message of freedom is something that should be very attractive to you as a young person. Because if you're not committing force, fraud, coercion, theft, or violence, if you're not hurting anybody, your life is your life, your body is your body, your business is your business, and your property is your property. It's not mine and it's not the government's. And what can I tell you as a student? I understand the cost of student loans and the cost of education is out of control in this country. And while I want to fight to make it less expensive for the next generation, I actually have a plan to get the government out of the student loan business for good that will allow you to have a little bit of relief by making all government-held student loans interest-free. We'll pay for that by cutting out some military bases and cutting some Pentagon spending and allowing you to get your government loan off of the balance sheet. And that'll bring free market practices back to education for the next generation.
Thank you. Either of you guys? Yep.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Did you say that you did want Joe Biden to get rid of your student debt, or that you didn't?
No, yes. Assume that I'm a person who's interested in
in getting rid of your student
absolutely.
debt. Yeah.
I like free things, you know. I haven't learned the Tanstaffel lessons yet.
100%. So, you know, I get that. You know, students have been sold a bill of goods that they should show up and go to college and that they'll get a good job and they'll earn the American dream. And, you know, students all over the country get out of college and find that there are no jobs available, that they're working under paying jobs that they thought they were going to get. And I think this is a problem. But the problem is caused by the government. The government has basically emphasized and given out these loans to students and pushed these loans because it's incentivized for them to do so. So for me, we need to get government completely out of student loans, okay? But that leaves us with all the people that still have loans, right? Biden has been getting rid of these, paying down these student loans, but they're still continuing to shovel them in at the other end. So we're gonna have this problem continuously. We need to get rid of that, and then we need to basically make it so that you have zero interest on your loans. If you've already paid off all the money that you owe, with principal and debt, you should just not have to pay anymore because you basically paid it off. And we can just stop this madness of the government being involved in student debt, get you out of your debt, and stop promoting always that people have to go to college. People could go to trade schools. People could do other things that might be more beneficial to them. We need to let the free market work, and it's not working right now because the government is involved creating mediocrity by being mediocre.
Thank you.
Liz, you seem like you're probably approximately the age of my daughter and my son. And if you're anything like my daughter and my son, you make decisions based on very important values that you consider to be close to your heart. You're not like my generation, making bad decisions with arithmetic. Your generation believes in values that do not align with the values of the people that run our government. Our government operates in the shadows because they don't want you to be analyzing their principles and their values. They don't do things that you would do. You would not send American money and American troops and American equipment to Iraq and to Afghanistan to prosecute a war that was not justified, that wound up not only costing your fellow Americans trillions of dollars, but wait for this, cost over 1 million lives. That is not something that you would do. It is not something that others in your generation would do. You would not decide that inflation is okay, but our generation has decided that. You would not decide that interest rates ought to be set the way that my generation has been setting interest rates. Did you know that the way that the United States sets interest rates on the dollar is that every 6 weeks we lock 12 old people into a room and we ask basically what mood they're in? That's not metaphorical. That's literally how it works. I'm guessing that if you and 11 of your cohorts, maybe including my son and daughter and 8 other people, decided how to run our government, it would look a hell of a lot different than it does now, starting with not passing down $30 trillion to the next generation.
Thank you. So say, for the sake of argument, imagine each of you, one of you is the Libertarian nominee, and you end up running against Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but also in a state where RFK Jr. is on the ballot as an independent, and you must make your pitch to somebody who considers themselves, maybe libertarian-ish, but probably going to pull that lever for RFK Jr. What is the super concise pitch, 30 seconds or under, that you make to that voter? I saw Chase first.
If you're libertarian-ish and you're thinking about pulling the lever for RFK, you need to stop doing that right now, because he's not building a party up by the foundation. He's an independent candidate that when he's gone, he's gone. It doesn't really build anything. So win, lose, or draw, you're going to be left with nothing. But if you get out and you vote for the libertarian candidate in your state, you're going to win ballot access for the party, you're going to make it easier for more candidates to run, and you're actually going to build something that will challenge the two-party system over the long haul.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes, I debated RFK Jr. directly, and the biggest thing that to be drawn from this experience, and having heard him at a luncheon as well at the California Libertarian Party convention, is that he's all for big government. The guy is a statist. How can you possibly elect or nominate a statist for the Libertarian Party, for one? But there's a rumor that he's actually going to seek the nomination.
Bring it on.
He's an unbelievable statist. The guy wants to institute 3% guaranteed mortgage loans hinging on the federal government, on the bond market. And he says it's like having a rich uncle co-sign on your loan. And I'm saying, what rich uncle would that be? The one Uncle Sam who's $34.5 trillion in debt? Is that the rich uncle that you mean? Because we don't have any rich uncles here.
You can clap for that.
Thank you. Any others?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, there's no path for RFK to become president of the United States. There's no path for him to win 270 electoral votes because the system is rigged. We have winner-take-all laws that will prohibit him from winning 270 electoral votes. The only path for RFK to win the president of the United States is to cause a contingent election, send it to the House of Representatives, and hope that they vote for him.
Thank you. Yes?
The big problem with Robert Kennedy is he is not a man who makes policy judgments based on principle. That is unfortunately the truth. And Michael is right. We had the opportunity to meet him in person. Nice guy, smart guy. I'm sure he's a patriot. He is not a principled guy. This is a guy who doesn't like vaccine mandates because he doesn't like vaccines. Let that sink in. If he loved the vaccines, guess what would be okay? He doesn't like wars until he likes the side he's on. This is why his position in the Middle East is very different from his position anyplace else. This is a guy who doesn't like the fact that government and corporations are all tangled up together. Why is that? Because he wants to use the government to knuckle under corporations to do what it is that he says for them to do. He's not just someone who's not a libertarian. He's not a man of principle, and that's important.
Thank you. So I want to drill down a little bit into more policy issues. Is what's happening at the southern border truly a crisis? And what role does the federal government actually play in immigration enforcement if you were elected president? Michael?
Yeah, so we do have a humanitarian crisis. The immigration issue is a humanitarian crisis caused by the government. Okay, there are several factors that have played into this. Of course, the war on drugs is a major one. This has created the cartels and the black market that they service. Obviously, the war on drugs has put a tremendous pressure on our border and has caused drug smuggling and human trafficking. Second of all, we have had foreign interventionism that has displaced people all around the globe. It is no wonder they have nowhere to go, so it's no wonder that they come here. That's number two. Number three, of course, our trade policies have been very much a factor here, and we need to get rid of all tariffs and all trade barriers so that these people will have something to do where they live because the production will be increased there. And finally, we have an artificial incentivization of the immigration issue. We are incentivizing immigration through social welfare payments. And just recently, for example, the Office of Refugee Resettlement noted that it spent $20 billion in the last 2 years alone, distributing money to NGOs who hand out money to immigrants. This is baiting people. It's artificially affecting the market for immigrants. And I hate to put it in those terms, but there's a way to look at it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So I agree that the war on drugs is a big part of the problem at the southern border. We've created these cartels, we've handed them a monopoly, and they are basically trafficking people now, and that is their business. And so we need to end that by ending the failed war on drugs and taking the money out of these people's hands. Look, I don't want to see any more kids and moms crawling under barbed wire. I don't want to see any more kids separated from their moms. It's disgusting. It shouldn't be happening. This is America. We should have people in policy that fix this, right? And we don't right now because the Republicans and Democrats raise funds off of this. They are feeding off of the suffering of people, and we have to stop this. So what I would do is I would vastly reduce the amount of visas that we have from 21 to 3, a work visa, an immigrant visa, and a visitor visa. And I would allow corporations to sponsor people to get people into the workforce as quickly as possible so that they can be productive members of society, which is what I believe most people fleeing these other countries would want to do.
Thank you. Yes, Chase, I saw you then.
So, I was recently on the border, both in Nogales, Arizona, and here in El Paso, Texas, and I got to speak both to folks involved in the immigration issue, the immigration crisis that is caused by our government, as well as business owners. When you hear a business owner in El Paso say, man, I wish I could hire some of these people, but they have no legal documentation to work, so they're stuck on the public dole and on the charities here in town, and it's stretching them thin. That is wrong. So I support an Ellis Island style of immigration. You come through a port of entry, declare who you are. If you're not dangerous or wanted for extradition, come right on in, get to work, get started. I don't care what you want to do as long as it's peaceful. And that is something that we can actually have in this country. And what we're causing right now is the crisis itself. If we were able to simplify this process, we could also make sure that everybody's coming in is safe. And if they're wanted for a crime that requires extradition and they feel like they're being persecuted, that's when you go through the asylum process. But really, we should have no quotas, no caps. Let the market determine how immigration works in this country. And you're right, remove incentivizing. You're right, remove the war on drugs. These are all things that will help the immigration crisis. But at the end of the day, if the government is not able to process people that are coming in a timely fashion, it creates the crisis that we're seeing on our southern border.
Thank you.
And one more thing I would say, if we could increase this Ellis Island style, we can have more seasonal employment for agricultural workers like in my home state of Georgia. They would come here for plant and harvest, they would go back with their dollars in their pocket, and they wouldn't stay here stuck.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. It needs to be said that there are two different issues going on here, and as libertarians, we need to be able to say both of them virtually at the same time. Number one, we need to recognize that immigration, when done right, when done legally, when done sanely, when done in an orderly fashion, is good for America. It's one of those things that defines America. It's good for our society, it's good for our culture, it's good for our economy, and as long as you don't do something moronic like pass out free money to people as they come over the border, it's even good for us financially. But at the same time, we need to be able to say that illegal immigration is bad for America. My friend Russ, who's in the back working the camera, make sure Lars is not completely in the camera there for me, if you will. Russ is a great guy. He's an attorney, but he's a good guy anyway. Russ and I spent a couple of days down at the border last year, and we came away really, in some sense, heartbroken over the magnitude of the humanitarian crisis going on down there. We met with Customs Border Patrol, we met with the sheriffs, we met with ranchers on the border. The number of people coming across the border that are sold into indentured servitude, it's a bad foreign policy, it's a bad domestic policy, it's bad for America. This is what undermines our wage structure, is people coming into the United States who have to work in the shadows. If we stop this silly idea of letting people in, either legally or illegally, and then telling them that they can't work, this is bass-ackwards. We should be telling people rather, I'm going to call you in 6 weeks to make sure you have a job. But as far as illegal immigration goes, we need to shut it down completely. It's bad for us, it's bad for immigrants, it's bad for America.
Thank you. So right now, inflation has been sky high for kind of a while. I live in evil New York City, and a carton of eggs is like $10 there. It's truly to an obscene point from my perspective. Gas prices have thankfully stabilized, but there's a huge housing supply crunch and mortgage rates are really high, so people feel as though they can't really transact real estate perhaps the way they want to. There's a little bit of this palpable sense right now that the American dream is out of reach. Is this in people's imaginations, or is this real? And how would you address this to the extent that the federal government needs to address it at all? Yes?
Yes, and the Fed. This is the real problem. This is the real problem. Look, the Federal Reserve is stealing the money out of your pocket each and every day. $34 trillion of debt. That is stolen from you. It's stolen from your standard of living. And people on social media are blaming the corporations, and they're blaming all the things that aren't the problem. The problem is endless printing of money is reducing the value of the money in your pocket so you can't buy anything. This is something that I have just come to believe totally firmly. We have to get rid of the Federal Reserve. It is just an abomination. And it is insidious, and people don't understand how it is ruining everyone in America's lives. The Cantillon effect basically allows for the government to take the money from you, give it to the Federal Reserve, who gives it to the banking cartel, who bros it out to the corporations, and by the time it gets down to you, it's pennies on the dollar. And that is why we have wealth inequality and income inequality in America, is because of the damn Federal Reserve and the Fed.
Thanks. Who raised their hand next? Yes? Michael, I saw you.
Yeah, this is a great question. It's very interesting to me because my son wrote a song called Miss American Dream, and it's about the fading ideal of the American dream. It's a sad song, and it's a very moving song, and it's nostalgic, and it's really tragic. So what has caused the loss of this American dream? The Federal Reserve's money monopoly has certainly played a massive role. And yes, I would love to strike down the Fed tomorrow and then audit it to find out just how much money they have been robbing us of. But in lieu of that, or I should say, not instead of, but in advance of ending the Fed, what can we do? We can encourage the use of parallel alternative currencies today. That is Bitcoin, gold leafs, silver, whatever. I am not here to adjudicate what currency people use. That is up to the network that they are in, that the network of exchange that they are involved in. But this is one way to get the effect of inflation, the devastating effect of inflation, off of our backs. And so parallel currencies today, not tomorrow. We need to build these networks, and I should say, with the looming possibility of a central bank digital currency, which would completely make all of our transactions transparent to the Fed and likewise the federal government, we better get these parallel currencies in place right now. Thank you.
Who is next? Chase?
I think I agree with much of what other people are saying here. Yeah, absolutely support alternative currencies such as Bitcoin, ending and auditing the Fed. I think that's libertarian boilerplate. I think if there's a libertarian on stage who's not supporting that, they need to be tomatoes thrown at them right now. But what we need to communicate to the voter is how dangerous and how bad inflation actually is for each and every one of them. As much as we hate it when Congress votes to raise taxes on us, inflation is a hidden tax that hits every one of our pockets. It hits every dollar you have, whether it's in your pocket, your boardroom, or in your bank. It doesn't matter where the money is. It's being stolen from you just by the very fact that they're printing trillions of dollars out of thin air and devaluing your dollar. And so yes, in the Fed, yes, support alternative currencies. I would even say if we can get our monetary policy back to a gold standard or something where it's actually tagged to something that's finite, that would be a great thing to do. But what we really need to tell these kids is if we don't stop the spending right now, it's only going to get worse. And the American dream that you see slipping out of your hands, which my generation has seen slipping out of our hands ever since we've gotten involved, will only be made much more manifest, which will happen much more quickly if we don't get spending under control. So for the next generation, I beg you, please, please help us in the Fed, help us bring monetary policy back under control so that inflation can be tacked to the market and not to the actions of government.
Thank you. Mike?
Liz, you're right. For a lot of people, it is increasingly difficult to pursue what we used to call the American dream, and it's for a number of different reasons. As a professional economist, the difference between my campaign and the others is that I have spent years interfacing with the Federal Reserve System. I know how it is that they think. They actually think that they're doing you a favor, and I know how to fix it. As you know, I've spent an enormous proportion of my campaign talking about the Federal Reserve System, including the world's most boring 2-minute video on how to end the Federal Reserve System. I encourage everyone to go watch it after this debate. It'll make the debate look good by comparison. But it starts out with this. We need to replace the governors in the Federal Reserve System with people who understand that we need a rules-based system and not a discretionary system whereby which the Fed can just create as much money as they want. We need a rule in place to limit the amount of money that is created, because inflation is one of those things that outlasts presidential campaigns and new presidents and old presidents. It just keeps rolling on. It makes it difficult for young people to make ends meet. It makes it difficult for the middle class and for the underclasses to make ends meet. And not as a police officer, not as an economist, but as a police officer, I can tell you, I have seen up close and personal the devastating effects of bad public policy. It's not just inflation. We need to change our policies on the local level regarding the stupid monopolies of education at the local level. We need to change our zoning policies. We need to change our housing policies. And arguably above all, we need to end the war on drugs. This is something that undermines families and our entire culture. Remember, if you remember nothing about me forever, remember please the following. Intergenerational poverty of the persistent kind that we have too often in the United States is not something that is a phenomenon predicted by free markets. It is a product of bad public policy.
Thank you. Following the Dobbs Supreme Court ruling, abortion has been returned to the states. Roe and Casey are no longer the law of the land, and states, including the state that we're in, which I guess now has basically nearly outlawed abortion, have made a patchwork of abortion laws that put some women in a bind where they must travel very far distances or incur all kinds of costs in order to abort unwanted babies or fetuses, whatever. Your nomenclature will probably depend on your sort of moral compass on this issue. Is this better than what existed before? Chase.
So the first thing is I've met lots and lots of women as I travel the campaign trail, and almost without a doubt, that's the first question is, where do you stand on the topic of abortion?
So I'm not like other girls by making it like my 17th question.
No, no, so I am pro-choice. I am unapologetically pro-choice on the concept of bodily autonomy. I believe in the right for a woman to choose up until the point of viability, after which I believe the only exception should be for the life of the mother, because at that point there is 2 viable lives at stake. But up until that point, that should be the decision of the mother if they want to continue the pregnancy. I think there are things we can do to lower the number of abortions in this country without outlawing it and making criminals of doctors and women. We can make birth control over the counter so it's easier to access. We can, streamline the process of adoption so more people see that as a viable alternative. But what we cannot do in this country is deny women their bodily autonomy. It is something that is paramount to freedom. And so as somebody who is pro-choice, I am going to be a pro-choice candidate. I recognize that might lose me the votes of some people in this room, but it's where I stand, it's where my convictions are, and it's where lots of long hours of faith and reflection have brought me to.
What do you say to the pro-life libertarians, though, that say that that's a total violation of the non-aggression principle, that the unborn child bears rights too, and who would we be as libertarians if we allow those to be transgressed upon?
So my answer to that is if you believe the patchwork quilt of abortion policies across the country would actually solve that, you're not. If you believe abortion is murder, you should want abortion outlawed everywhere, all right? If that is your position, it should be outlawed everywhere because murder is illegal everywhere. I happen to think that there is a gray area there of conscience and allow individuals to make those decisions. And if you are pro-life in a pro-choice world, you have every right to not have an abortion. You just don't have the right to make that very, very personal determination for someone else.
I saw Michael with a hand up.
Yeah, so this is a very thorny and unpleasant topic, to be honest. But I should say this. The first thing I want to say is I don't want the state involved in arbitrating this issue at all. I don't want the state arresting women and doctors. I don't want the state hounding people, running them out of business. What I want is basically what I want doesn't matter. What matters is that what people want to do. And I do think, frankly, that abortion is a violation of the NAP. I do believe that, and this is just my personal belief, it has nothing to do with what I would do. I do believe that no matter the size or stage of development of an individual, they have the right of property in themselves, which is the primary, most fundamental right that we advocate as libertarians, property in oneself. So I do believe that's a violation. So what I would do is tell the truth of what I think. I think it's wrong, but I am not going to bring the state in to bring an end to it. That is just outrageous. We would have a nightmare in this country if that happened. The state has no business arbitrating this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes? Mike?
Thanks. I believe that how Chase feels about this and how I feel about this is really similar. And I would just like to, I'm going to ask Chase to answer a question on my time. I call myself pro-life, and you call yourself pro-choice. And yet, I don't think that our positions are very different. And this is the first time I've heard you say so boldly that you're pro-choice. And this is the first time anyone else is going to hear me say so boldly that I consider myself pro-life. And yet, I think our positions are similar. Would you agree with me that this should be a state issue?
No.
Okay, well, we do have differences. Look,
As in, Chase, you're saying that sort of across the board, all states ought to adopt the
Viability.
frameworks.
No, he's saying you believe it should be a federal issue.
I believe it should be across the board a viability standard. Yes.
Across the board is language. I'm asking you if you would support federal legislation that said states are not allowed to make their own laws.
I support no legislation with regards to abortion at any level other than the viability standard, whether that's done at the state level.
So are you supporting federal legislation or not?
I don't think this is a states' rights issue. Because like I said, if you
I believe the whole world is a states' rights issue.
What I mean is if you believe abortion is murder, it should be outlawed in every
do.
state. And if you don't believe abortion is murder, if you believe that it's a choice,
okay, I get it.
It should be allowed in any state.
I get it. So now I do see that we have some differences. Look, I call myself pro-life because I don't like abortion. I'm not going to be able to hide how I feel about this issue, having been raised as a Lutheran and a Calvinist. But it needs to be said, we all want the government out of this. We all want the government
I don't know
out
if
of
I
this.
do. A little awkward.
We want the government
tell anyone
to
our
be
reason.
only involved in those stages where we all agree. For those of us who feel pro-life, we need to make this argument in a cultural sense, not using the government. You don't get to use the government and public policy as a weapon to make your argument. You don't get to skip to the end of the argument and say, well, now we're going to use public. I can't win my argument in a public policy sense, and so now I get to shove it down your throat. That's not how this works. We need to allow states in conjunction, in alignment with their individual state cultures to make these decisions. Michael is right. This is an uncomfortable discussion. But this is not a discussion for us to impose on some other state. Just because I don't like abortion, just because I feel pro-life, doesn't mean I get to shove it down everyone else's throat.
Thank you. Lars? Do you have
Yes,
thoughts?
absolutely. So when I was young, I knew two different young ladies that had abortions. And I talked to them many years later. And one of them said that it was the horrible, worst decision of her life. And the other one said that it was the best decision of her life. I'm glad that I never have to make that decision. I don't think that if Mike and Chase argued all day and all night that they would change each other's mind, ever. And I don't think that if I said anything, it would change your mind on this issue. What I believe is that we should not use government force to tell one group of people how to behave over another group of people. And that's it. Thank you.
But we do that. So I want to follow up here.
Yeah.
But we do that in lots of areas, right? Like the murder example is a good one. We do have laws that are laws of the land that we don't really allow states to sort of decide their own course on.
And that's wrong.
Right? No, but so it's murder
The
should be a
federal government should
state-by-state
not be
issue.
involved in deciding whether murder is illegal, as much as we all agree. It's an easy one. Every state has laws against murder. You don't need the federal government telling you that killing someone is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Michael,
just want
did
to
you
say
have a thought?
Mike's right here, and this has been my argument from the entire get-go of this campaign. Is this is decentralization? This is decentralization. This is a perfect example of it. You can't arbitrate what the cultures of various regions do, and in terms of this being, if it's a universal wrong, it is not recognized as such. Okay, so that's the fact. It's just not recognized as such. Yes, murder is illegal, and it's recognized as such. But this is not. This is a very divisive issue, but it's not recognized. So those people that want to make their case for one side or the other need to do so. And that's the only thing that we can do. We need I think we need a campaign, a cultural and spiritual campaign, but that's just my belief. It isn't up to these 4 men on stage to decide this issue, Frank.
No, it should be up to me, the woman who's very pro-life.
Exactly.
No, I'm only
I'm
kidding.
sorry.
You guys wouldn't like the laws I call, but Chase, I do want to give you the opportunity to respond.
But what I'm
This
saying is
interesting.
being pro-choice is allowing for that decision to be made at the individual level, which is the most localized level. That's the most decentralized level, is making an individual decision. That's why it needs to be allowed in all 50 states. The truth is a local tyranny is just as bad as a state tyranny, which is just as bad as a federal tyranny. Tyranny is tyranny. Removing body autonomy from women is wrong. It doesn't matter whether it's the state government doing it, the local government doing it, or the federal government doing it. Women have rights. And I will say that this is an inherent right. And if we're going to have a federal government, they should protect inherent rights. And one of those is bodily autonomy for every man, woman, and child.
With all due respect, Chase was not, there's no reason why Chase should have gotten an extra minute here. Let me pin you down, buddy, because
Michael,
what you
take
just said, policy-wise,
I'm
is
not
that
running for president.
you believe in federal legislation making it impossible for a state to pass a law that says it's illegal to abort a child 10 minutes before delivery.
No.
That's what you just said.
No, I just said
I'm going to give you a chance to back off of it, but that's what you said.
I support the right to choose up until the viability standard, which is what most Americans support, while also supporting the Hyde Amendment, which would put no federal dollars towards abortion. But absolutely,
So you're saying that women don't have
no,
a choice until 10 minutes
No,
to go?
I support a federal standard that says no state may infringe upon the bodily autonomy of women, and that is a 50-state standard, and that is where the standard should be.
Okay,
Up
I
until
want-
viability.
Up until viability.
Then say up
can I
until
chime in here?
viability.
I have
this is-
said multiple
I
times.
want to maintain some amount of order here, though I do kind of love the violent conflict, right? Like, I'm hoping somebody throws a punch, right? Like, it would be really funny if we're talking about, like, violence and nonviolence and aggression and non-aggression, and then somebody gets really aggressive. Michael, did you have a 30-second
30
final
seconds.
thought to
What I
cap
want
us
to
off?
say is what shouldn't be happening, which is happening, is the federal government is funding abortions. That is absolutely wrong. They should not be funding them.
Support the Hyde Amendment.
And furthermore, they're also funding all kinds of they're putting their finger on the scale in many ways, culturally, socially. They're trying to tip the scales in a particular directions. They should not be doing that at all. Get the state out of these matters. Thank you.
So I want to bring us all together and sort of have a group therapy session now. I imagine we're all in agreement about the taxes being too damn high.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So if elected president, how would you simplify the tax code? And look, we already got bogged down in the abortion specifics. I need a 30-second or shorter answer that really cuts to the heart of this. Lars, I saw you first.
All right. So we need to abolish the 16th Amendment. The income tax is a coercive method of the state. And look, no one should have to go to jail for filling out a piece of paper wrong. I've been audited by the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board more times than anybody should ever have happen to them. We need to get rid of the income tax, let people keep 100% of the paycheck. We need to get rid of the payroll tax. It's stealing money. You should keep 100% of the money that you earn through work. The government has no right to it. Thank you.
Yep, Chase.
Yeah, so I support an end to the income tax as well. I think we can get our government small enough to not need one. But in lieu of that, what we can do is we can fight to remove all subsidies and deductions out of the tax code and just flatten the rate overall. Because that's what we have right now in this country, is where people don't know what their neighbor is paying or other people are paying. Just flatten the rate out, remove all subsidies and deductions, lower the tax code altogether if you can't eliminate the income tax, which I would love to do, but it requires a constitutional amendment. That's a little higher thing to go through. But what we can do is demand that our leaders today remove deductions and subsidies and flatten the code.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, so
One of the Michaels?
Michael,
okay.
please. We have to make distinctions here.
Yeah.
Am I
Let's
going
do
or are you
Michael.
going?
Yeah, me.
Michael's going.
Michael, yeah.
Yep.
Look, you asked how would I simplify the tax code? Very simple. I'd end it completely. And I wouldn't replace it with like a flat tax, a flat sales tax. You know, my hero is Murray Rothbard, and he said, never replace a tax with another tax. This is disastrous. Do not replace a tax with another tax. And that's what some of my fellow candidates want to do. I think it's ridiculous. First of all, you would have to say, well, people under $40,000 of income could be exempt. Well, how do you find out if they make $40,000 or not? You have to file an income tax return. How else are you going to know? And then there's a race to the bottom. Everybody, of course, would claim every exemption they possibly could and deductions, gazillion deductions and so forth. So we need to abolish it, period. I don't want to talk about reforms of the income tax. It's just mind-numbing.
Thank you. Mike?
It's okay that went on for 3 minutes. He was exactly right. That answer is so good, I just want to prattle on and waste my time and say, he's got it right. Look, I love these two guys, but your answers were terrible.
No, they were good. They were good, actually.
The idea of replacing with a sales tax, oh my Lord, no, we can't do that. And the idea of working so hard to change the income tax code and then replacing with a flat tax, that's just not worth the lift. I can't be bothered. We need to shut down the income tax and end the IRS. And the reason we need to do that is because the relationship between the federal government and us as individuals is completely inappropriate. We need to force the federal government to go to state legislatures for the money. We need to have someone stand up for our rights. The reason that we get steamrolled is because nobody in Washington cares about you or me. And the IRS just steamrolls us. Lars is right. Being audited is a hell of an experience. I've been audited. It is not a fair fight, right? They have their own courts. They steamroll right over you. Nobody cares how much money they spend. We need to end the income tax completely.
So, presidents, for better or worse, are given vast war-making powers. Congress is also, of course, supposed to authorize our entry into foreign entanglements, but we all know that that's not really how that goes. This is a little bit more relevant of a question, I think, especially because we might be on the precipice of Iran, possibly striking Israel right now. And obviously, things have been very intense in the Middle East lately. We've had issues with, obviously what happened on October 7th, Israel and Gaza. We've had, Houthi militants striking ships that's forcing all these container ships to divert their traffic, which creates supply chain issues throughout the world. We also have an ongoing conflict where Putin has entered into Ukraine. And, the United States, in some way or another, is supporting its allies and or bankrolling some of these things. How would you take steps to roll back executive power in war-making? But more specifically, how would you handle these two situations in Israel, when with Gaza, and the situation in Ukraine as well as the threat posed to Iran? I imagine you don't necessarily have a fully fleshed out plan for every single one of those, but what is your attitude?
I do.
Yes? Okay, everybody does? Okay, well, let's try to keep them.
Everybody does. I do.
Let's try to keep them as concise as possible. Let's skip past a lot of the boilerplate libertarian end the war, roll back the spending, because I'm just going to assume that we're all totally on the same page here. But what are the specific areas in which you would handle these situations differently than your opponents would? I saw Lars up first.
Thank you. So, look, the Congress should authorize use of military force, not the president. So I would not have the president with AUMF. I would return the power to the Congress. They should do their job, like I said before.
This is standard libertarian
No,
stuff,
but it is the truth. No, but it
Okay.
is the truth, because that is their job, is to declare war, and they're not doing it. That's what I said in my opening statement, that I'm going to reduce the power of the president and return the power to Congress to make them do their damn job. The reason they don't do their job is because they want to get reelected, and they don't want to have weird things hanging out there. They don't want to take responsibility. This is what our founding fathers wanted, was for them to do their job, and they're not doing it. We need to reduce the power of a president and get rid of this stuff. So as far as foreign relations, look, we're $34 trillion in debt. We're broke. We can't afford any more anything. We've got to stop funding foreign wars. We've got to get our nose out of it. Look, I talked about we don't want to be forcing our views on other people in America. Imagine being in a foreign country where America comes and tells you how you should live your life. Right? That pisses people off. And that's when we start getting George Floyd riots and January 6th, except they turn into Gaza and Ukraine. And we got to stop that stuff.
Thank you. Michael.
Yeah, so just as we speak, the U.S. is moving forces to the Middle East on contingency that Iran might strike Israel. And so we now are involved in another theater of war. I'm not going to give you the boilerplate answer. We need, of course, no funding of any nation for any wars or any foreign aid, period, and then cut it all. But in the particular case of Israel, and this is going to differ from a boilerplate point of view, our foreign policy has been dictated to by Israeli lobbyists. I mean, this is just a fact. AIPAC has an incommensurate impact on the policies of the United States, embroiling us in a potential war now in the Middle East again. This is unbelievable. We need to examine the relationship between the United States and Israel. And I would put it this way. I consider Israel a friend, but you don't give the keys of the car to a friend when they're drunk. You don't let them drive drunk. You get the keys back. So this is exactly what we're doing. We're actually enabling Israel to put their own country in jeopardy. We're enabling them to do it by sending endless arms and aid and military aid to Israel. We're actually harming them.
Thank you. Chase?
I'm going to echo many of the sentiments that others are saying on stage, but the truth is if we were a friend to Israel, and I don't mean a military ally having to give them any money, but if we were just somebody who has a relationship with Israel, as we do, many people know people in Israel, we should be able to be their friend and say, what you are doing here is wrong. What you are doing in relation to the response to October 7th is wrong. While you have every right to hold Hamas to justice, which they do, the non-surgical, complete airstrikes that are killing tens of thousands of innocent people, that is wrong. And we have to be friendly enough to Israel to tell them this. Just like we should have had somebody come to us on 9/12/2001 and say a global worldwide war is not going to make the world a better place. It's actually going to destabilize the world. And that's the world we're living in right here and now. We need to be willing to tell Israel, when you're killing tens of thousands of young people, babies, innocent people, you are destabilizing the region. You're making it harder to be an Israeli who lives safe in their life. You're making you're flaming intentions in Gaza and in the Arab world around you. You are facilitating this course that we are on, and the only way to stop it is if you reverse course now and call for a ceasefire. We have to be brave enough to call for this. If people want to call us, oh, you're anti-Semitic because you want a ceasefire. Why? Because I want less dead Jews in the world? Does that make me anti-Semitic? No, I want more peace in the world. And we have to be willing to be those people that say those things. And in regards to Ukraine, I have always said that I have a policy in any war zone, if people want to sponsor people to be refugees, we should absolutely be able to sponsor anybody to get out of the war zone in Ukraine, in Gaza, or anywhere else. But I would also say that if you're a member of the Russian military who's being conscripted to go fight in this war, I support your right to claim asylum claim in the United States, because nobody should be forced by their government to go fight in a war and die. And so I think that as a human rights abuse, those people deserve an asylum claim, and I would bring them here and demoralize the front line of the Russian military and hopefully push them back across Ukraine to sue for peace. That's no war, no money, but without firing a single shot, we can do that.
Thank you.
Each of the theaters in which we are about to trip into World War III teaches us a different lesson. So instead of talking about the overall principles globally, let me talk about each theater individually. We need to unwind the silly relationship that we have with Taiwan, which has created a self-fulfilling prophecy. The idea that we would protect Taiwan come hell or high water has led to overinvestment there in microchips that we now believe that we can't live without, and therefore we are, according to the White House, willing to go to war with the People's Republic of China over microchips. That is every bit as stupid as it sounds. We need to tell the PRC they can have their cake and eat it too, but they're going to have to wait for us to unwind our stupid policy of strategic ambiguity in the China Strait. Number two, with regard to Ukraine, the reason we're in this is because of our stupid policy toward Europe. The idea of NATO was probably a bad idea 20 years ago. It was probably a bad idea 40 years ago. But it's absolutely not in America's interest any longer to be taking money away from Americans and use it to project defense power in Europe. We have intimidated the Russians, and don't mishear me. Moscow is one of the few governments on this planet that makes Washington look smart. I am no apologist for Putin or anybody else who's running the show over there. But the truth is that we got ourselves into this by making promises that we had no intention of keeping. We should not be waging a proxy war on behalf of anyone, least of all Ukraine. With regard to Israel, I know it feels different. I personally have attachments there. I've traveled at north, south, east, west. I've traveled to Palestinian territory with my children. I have sent my children there to train there, to party there. I get how we feel. I have people on my team with family there. Believe me, I get how we feel about it. But as a matter of principle, we have to learn that foreign aid doesn't work. It ties us to governments over whom we have no influence. Much of the reason that Israel is in this predicament is because of the crappy relationship with the United States. Israel would be better off if it were not tied to us, and we would be better off if we were not tied to a responsibility for owning up to everything that the Israeli government does. That's the truth.
Thank you.
Agreed.
During the COVID pandemic, we were deprived of our civil liberties across the board. Anthony Fauci, who essentially served as pandemic czar, has not receded from public life. He hasn't been punished in any way, really. He hasn't really been held accountable for the ways in which his policy recommendations harmed tons of Americans, whether it's school children who've suffered learning loss, or the many adults struggling with loneliness and depression and alcoholism that really didn't exist to the same degree before the pandemic. Families were not allowed to bury their dead. Believers were not allowed to worship. How should we talk about this dark time? And does Anthony Fauci or any of the federal government officials who made this happen to the rest of us, do they deserve any consequences for this? What would this look like in your eyes? Michael, I saw your hand get raised.
The entire COVID regime needs to be investigated and prosecuted all the way down the line, from the inception, beginning with the inception of the virus in the first place, which is a bioweapon. It's a bioweapon. First of all, why is the United States government involved in the creation of bioweapons? This has to stop immediately. And we need to be out ahead of these issues. COVID was a total disaster, the most rights-infringing episode in modern history. If we weren't out in front of this thing, like I was, writing and talking and speaking about it all over the place, and talking about what a totalitarian regime it imposed, if we weren't out in front of it, then how are we going to be expected to be out in front of the next crisis? Disease X, which is being concocted as we speak. I'm not talking about the disease, but they're framing this already. Disease X is next. And then, of course, there's climate catastrophism, which they're going to use to restrict our rights. Believe me, it is all about restricting and controlling people. And that is the next crisis they're going to impose. I have written about it extensively. I've actually taken on the climate science directly.
Thank you. Well, hold on. What do you mean when you use sneer quotes or scare quotes about the climate science?
I don't buy it.
Mean?
I think I call it climate change catastrophism because it's been concocted. I have a PhD in the history of science. I studied science. This is not science. This is the most flimsy science that there is. It is unbelievably, it's close to fraudulence. If not fraudulent, I write.
Chase, I saw your hand go up.
So how should we look at the COVID era? The COVID era should be looked at as the largest, most broad invasion of people's individual liberty that happened in the 21st century. Now, I preface that because I believe segregation was pretty terrible, slavery before that in the 19th century. But in the 21st century, without a doubt, this is the greatest invasion of human liberty. People were locked down. I always tell people a story about a friend of mine. She was a florist. She loved making flowers, and her business was shut down during COVID because it wasn't essential. Granted, the Lowe's that had a garden center down the street was still open selling flowers. And her business didn't make it. It didn't survive. And now she works at the Lowe's Garden Center. She works for the big corporate store instead of her own business that was her dream. Those are the stories we need to be reaching out and telling people because those affect each and every individual American. And I'm somebody who's always said, get the government out of our lives as much as possible. I have always said, don't trust politicians about medical stuff, trust doctors as opposed to them, and not even all doctors you can trust. I happen to have a really good one. But we should look at that time as a clear infringement upon our liberty and never, ever let it be repeated again. And use the lessons that have come from this, the loss of businesses, the loss of life, the loss of livelihoods, as an example for why it should never, ever be allowed to happen again. It shouldn't really have been allowed to happen to begin with, but that's what you happen when we have Republicans and Democrats. Now, I will say this. If you want to see Anthony Fauci taken to task, I support creation of a special prosecutor to be able to look at all the illegality that might have happened during the COVID era. I also support the creation of a COVID, like we had the 9/11 Commission, a COVID commission to examine every single step and misstep that government made along the way so it won't happen again, hopefully. They can ignore that, of course. And then lastly, I'll say this. If you want to see a group of people taking Anthony Fauci to task, remember what ACT UP did in the 90s. They walked in and they shut down the FDA through the practice of nonviolent peaceful resistance. And if this ever comes to us again, we need to take a page from that book and challenge Anthony Fauci directly with activism.
What you're suggesting is kind of funny because the government absolutely loves making commissions to study absolutely everything, right? It's another way for them to waste our time and money. And yet this is the one area where they suddenly just, have no interest in investigating what
Isn't it
went
funny
down.
how that happens when they want to investigate their own wrongdoing?
Yeah.
They don't want to make a commission. But, of course,
I'm
that would
catching on to
expose
the
a lot.
fact that they might not be so great at what they're doing. Who do we have next? Lars?
Yep. Does anybody else feel like we're being groomed by the government? Yeah. Look, Anthony Fauci was Trump's swamp creature. He was also Clinton's swamp creature, he was Bush's swamp creature, and he was Obama's swamp creature. Isn't it interesting that he's not being prosecuted? I wonder what kind of dirt he has on all those people. And do you really believe that a commission or an investigation is going to be real and honest by our government? No, absolutely not. I think that they need to be held accountable. The people that did this, the people who perpetrated this, whether we'll find out who that actually was and what that was all about, I don't know. But it definitely was not normal. It was definitely not normal. I literally was watching business news and watching China weld its citizens into their houses. And I said, thank God I live in America where that will never happen. Yeah. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, I'm watching old people watching the sunset get rolled up by the cops and telling them to go home because they're out past curfew. That should not happen in America. If I was president, that would not happen in America.
Thank you. Mike?
Absolutely. I love everything that Lars just said there. You're right. We do need a commission and a special prosecutor. The way you do that is you actually start with a special counsel. Russ, I assume that you'll take up the job. You helped me stand up to the FEC. Certainly standing up to Anthony Fauci will be a lot easier than that. Look, we need a complete separate, where this needs to go, right? We need a complete separation in this nation of science and state. The problem here is not that the science sucked, which it did. The problem is that the government is involved in science, and it has no business being involved in science. Not only was it involved in the science, it was involved in the development of the virus. That's a weird thing, by the way, we probably should spend an hour on that. Then the government decided to lie to you about how it was developed. It lied to you about how the virus was developed and how it was financed. And then they lied to you about how the vaccine was developed. They lied to you about the fact that the pharmaceutical companies were free from liability, and that gave them the chance to lie to you about the side effects. Wait for it. They already knew about the vaccine and decided not to tell you about that. The problem here is not merely that they're unethical, that they lie to you, that they're dopey, that the science sucked. The problem is more fundamental. The government should not be involved in these processes, and until we get them out, we will be their subjects. Lars is right. We're being groomed. What I fear is that two groups of people in this country learned two very different lessons at the same time. We learned all the terrible things that the government can do to us. It's good that we learn that, because next time we're going to stand up harder, louder, and faster. But the people who run this government, they learn the same damn lesson. They learn that they can do some weird shit to you. And they're going to try it next time, louder, faster, and harder. And we need to be ready.
There are a few things more sacred than how we raise our children, right? How we raise our children is how we, instill them ideally with libertarian ideas, or certainly with critical thinking skills, the ability to not just be sheeple, where the government and other people in positions of authority get to tell them what to believe or how to live. How would you sell the idea of school choice, which I think we probably all believe in, to parents across the country? How do you make the pitch to the apolitical, moderate mother who just loves her kids and wants to make sure they learn how to read and develop those critical thinking skills? How do you make your pitch to her? Chase.
So I got to make this pitch to lots and lots of moms at the Iowa State Fair, because I probably spoke to 3,000 or 4,000 people throughout that weekend. Raise your hand if you're a parent here in the room. All right, I bet each and every one of you whose hands is up, you have unconditional love for your children. You would fight and die for your children if you had to. So you're going to be your child's best advocate because you have that unconditional love and desire to see them survive and thrive. You know who doesn't have that? A bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., a bureaucrat in Austin. They don't know your kid. They don't know what makes them special. They don't know the struggles they go through or the triumphs they've had. You know those things. So why do we continue to take power out of your hands and give it to those bureaucrats? That's a wrong that needs to be righted. Each and every parent should have sole dominion over the way their kids are raised, over the way their kids are educated, over the things their kids are exposed to, because that's the role of a parent, is to be the advocate for their child, not the state. The state will never be a true advocate for your child. And so if you really want true educational freedom, I support putting that power in your hands as a parent, because you know the kind of school that's going to be best for your kids, and not a public school system that is determined by your zip code. Because in Atlanta, where the schools are so bad that the teachers and administrators had to cheat and create a RICO conspiracy to lie about test scores, well, if you're a parent in that jurisdiction, you want better options, and I think we deserve to give those parents better options, because again, they are going to be the true advocate for their children, not the state.
Thank you. Michael, I saw your hand up.
Yes. So everybody here is going to say that we should separate the state and education, and I agree 100%. But are they going to go this far that we should get rid of governmental mandatory education, period? We don't need to have mandatory education imposed by the state. Let's allow people to educate themselves and their children as they see fit. Does a child need to go to school for 12 years? It really is up to the child and the parent. This is not a requirement that should be imposed on us by the state. And so I go further than simply school choice. And I certainly don't like charter schools, because it's a way of the state getting a control of a market that is potentially breaking away from their power. And then it captures that market and imposes state imperatives on those schools. So I say school choice should go to the point, all the way to the point, where the state has no arbitration on the matter whatsoever. Let the child and the parent do what they will education-wise. Thank you.
Lars.
Yeah. So we've given government a monopoly on education for our children. And whenever we give government a monopoly, things go really bad. Look, one of my daughters has dyslexia, and growing up, it was really challenging in the public school system to get anything for her. In fact, they completely failed her, and I had to get her a different type of education on my dime. They want to put everybody in a box, and students don't live in a box. Every student is different. Every student has different needs, and the government is ill-equipped to deal with all the different types of people that are out there. My other student is a straight A student, and I took her out of school for a couple weeks, and I got a truancy letter that said I was going to be taken to court, and I was going to be, have the book thrown at me for taking my student out of school for 2 weeks. And I realized they only wanted my student in their school so they could get paid. They only care about the money. They don't care about the damn student and whether they're learning or not. So I agree that we should get the state out of education. We need to let the market create a better education system. Government breeds mediocrity, and the more government we have, the more mediocre we become, and it's no more apparent than our public education system. Abolish the Department of Education at the federal level and give people choice in their education for their students.
Thank you. Mike?
I love that. I love the truancy letter. When the FEC sent me that dopey letter that says I'm supposed to divulge all the financial information that I'd already given them just 12 months earlier, Russ sent him a nasty letter. I'll get him to send you a letter for the truancy thing that says my daughter's not going to go to school anymore. Go pound sand. Look, the way that we want to address this issue, because I think what your question was how do we sell it to folks? We need to recognize that you as a parent, it's your values that you want instilled in the education of your children. The only way you're going to be able to do that is to choose the school that's best for you. If you think that's a government school, which would be a little bit weird, by the way, but if you think that's a government school, go for it. But if it's not, you should have that choice. In the long run, you're not going to have, I don't know what the long run is. I don't know if it's 2 years or 22 years. But in the long run, you're not going to have the government choice, because if we create a level playing field for competition, the government schools are going to get run out. And that's the way that we want this to work. We don't want the government to have a monopoly. We know that we want, as a matter of efficiency, just speaking as an economist, never mind the education in itself or the ethics, never mind all the more important issues. Just as a matter of economics, we want competition because the schools will get better. But in the long run, the government schools are going to get run out. And then, to Michael's point, we'll be able to get government out of it altogether. But the way that you need to lead that conversation is to remind parents, it should be up to you. It's your values that should be governing your kids' education.
Thank you. So I'm a resident of Status New York City now, but I'm originally a Texan. So it's kind of awesome. So I know a thing or two about when I can sort of sense in a room the energy changing to the point where everybody's like, I need a beer. It's hot outside. These dudes have been talking for a while. So I think at this point, we've gotten a strong sense of your different approaches. I think it's time that we sort of move in the beer and cocktails direction. But I want to give you guys each the opportunity to make a 3-minute closing statement, final pitch to delegates and to voters about why you are the person who ought to represent them on a national stage. We will start with Michael.
Thank you. So listen, I'm running to lead a movement. This is not merely a campaign. This is a movement. And the movement is to wrest power from the federal government and to vest it into people at the local level. This is not about a white knight riding into D.C. and fixing all the problems. That is the model we have been taught. If we think with a central government model, we'll end up with central government. We need to get away from central government thinking altogether. And that means decentralization. Getting people in office at the local level to control their lives as such. Finally moving towards total privatization, which I think is really the ultimate goal. And why is that the ultimate goal? Because the state has no business existing, let alone what it's doing to us. It is a vampire. And so I'm running on a message of bold leadership, not simply a statement of limited government and we'll curtail this and we'll curtail that. This is nothing. This will go nowhere. We need bold messaging, fearless leadership, and original thinking. I think I bring all those to the table. I have exhibited in 12 books, 5 of them from a libertarian perspective, dealing with issues across the board, including not only the typical infringers of our rights, but also the new infringements that are coming down the pike. I have written about all of these things. We have right now, coming up in July, I think it's going to be decided whether the United States signs on to the WHO Pandemic Treaty, which is eventually going to cede our sovereignty to them.
Yes.
So I am leading with bold messaging. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are worse than teenage girls over here taking selfies on stage. Lars, let's take it to you.
I'm sorry, that's better than teenage girls, not worse than teenage girls.
You guys look worse than
We're on the
teenage
TikToks. We're on the
Lars,
TikToks.
We didn't even get into age of consent laws or seatbelt laws. I really exercised some restraint here. Lars, go
All
ahead.
right, look, I'm trying to do something different here. I'm trying to grow this party. I'm trying to drive massive amounts of dollars to this party. I'm a businessman. I ran a large company, a lot of internet companies. I was a serial entrepreneur. I grew my biggest company to 600 employees doing $350 million a year in sales, and I sold that in 2007 for $500 million, okay? I'm using that money to get our libertarian message out there, and I've developed a plan to do just that. And I've developed a plan that is going to give libertarians in every state, all the people who are running. I met a bunch of candidates tonight, and thank you, Texas, for running candidates, because a lot of states don't do that. My whole campaign is to get national media attention for the Libertarian Party so that people know what the hell a libertarian is, that we're not a libtard or a MAGA who smokes dope, that people go to the polls and say, I want to vote for a libertarian. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to cause a contingent election on election night. And people are going to go across the map, and it's going to be California is blue, and Texas is red, and Florida is red, and what the hell is this gold crap doing on the map? Okay? And that is going to give us the win that we so rightly deserve. That is going to give us the credibility that we need. That is going to give us, for the next 4 years, all the candidates running, I would vote for you, but you can't win. Oh, crap, you won. Now I will vote for you. Right? This is what's going to get it. And I am getting this right now. Donald Trump called the governor of Nebraska to get rid of the split electoral vote, which is exactly what I'm doing after I'm on the radio with Smirconish, right? This we can do. I went to Maine because this is where I want to go, and they didn't have ballot access. So I gave them $25,000 and hired a bunch of people with Bill Redpath and Richard Winger and the chair of Maine, and I got them ballot access, major party status. Without me doing that, we wouldn't have this, okay? The National Party also put money in, and thank you to them for that. But look, this is totally achievable. We only need to win 250,000 votes. I have people on the ground in Nebraska and Maine. We're setting up shop right now. I'm not waiting for the general election. I'm already on the ground. I have a huge team of people, 200 volunteers, tons of paid staff. I have one of the best, if not the best staff in the presidential race. I put $700,000 into my campaign so far. And when I win the general, I am going to put another $100,000 a month in, and I have lots of donors ready to go with PAC money to get this thing going. We can win this. I just need you to show up in Washington, D.C. for me. Vote first round as a delegate. Go to Lars24.com. Check it out. I need you to help me.
Thank you. Mike? And you have to be a little shorter than Lars, because I want him to have ballot access, but microphone access. No, just kidding. Thank you.
We all do appreciate everything that Lars has done for ballot access. He's thrown some significant money at it, and I don't want to diminish that in any way. But I got to draw the line at saying you got the better team. I got a lot of people at home who are going to be pretty pissed if I don't stand up for our team. The truth of the matter is that we've got 20 professionals paid. I know not enough. Don't start calling me right now. I know that we don't pay them enough, but we have 20 professionals on our team because we're actually ready for the general election. And the reason that we're ready is because we take this very seriously. I'm sure many of you know Jim Turney. He has been on our team for over 2 years. He is a past LNC chairman, twice elected, who has just come on board our team full-time to lead the charge going into the general election. We've got a PAC about to be ready to line up. We've got a book out. You can see it for $9 on Amazon.com or at the table. We've got an artificial intelligence bot up and running. You've seen it in its beta phase. It's about to come out in its final phase. It's going to blow the lid off of this election. We take this very seriously. And the reason we do is because it is up to us as libertarians to represent the interests of a lot of people around the United States who can't even spell libertarianism, that don't know that there is a Libertarian Party. Remember, this isn't about you and me. You already knew it wasn't about me. This is not about the people that we know. This is about people all over the United States who cannot stand up, who are the least able among us to stand up to the force of the federal government, least able to withstand the idea that they should be taxed to death. We need to represent these people.
Okay.
I thought this was 3 minutes.
A little bit more. You can have a little bit more.
I've had 1 minute and 53 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you wasted all that time there. No, go ahead. Finish it up.
I pushed the button when Lars stopped talking. Okay.
God, don't push the button.
Okay. The reason we're in this the way we are is because we believe that to actually disrupt the American political duopoly is going to require a very competitively credible campaign. We lean very hard into my own personal background of public service and public policy. As a police officer for 11 and a half years, until just a couple of years ago, I learned the hard way, and in some ways the easy way, of what it takes to actually change our criminal justice system. We need profound change. And when a police officer talks about it, it matters. And when an economist talks about how we need to change the way we spend money in the White House and on Capitol Hill, people listen. That's why we're in it to win it, and that's how we're going to change American politics. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So I started this journey running for president in Adelaide, Texas. That was the first place I traveled to meet with libertarians and talk about the message of freedom. I've been all through the state of Texas. I've been to Fort Worth, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, El Paso. I'm missing one. Abilene, absolutely, and now I'm here in Corpus Christi. Why? Because I believe in being a candidate with the energy and enthusiasm to put our message forward. I'm going to be a 50-state candidate in about 2 weeks, traveling to all 50 states of this country, putting a bold libertarian message forward so voters can see that there's somebody other than Donald Trump running and Joe Biden running for president. Voters are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we need to harness that energy and bring them into the tent. And we need to do that with an evangelical style of being a libertarian. What is your libertarian issue? And you come on it. Are you against money being taken out of your pocket to go kill babies overseas with bombs? Welcome to liberty. Are you tired of seeing people being put in cages or having to climb under barbed wire to seek freedom for their own lives? Welcome to liberty. Are you tired of eminent domain, stealing your land to build a wall or a pipeline through your farm? Welcome home to liberty. Whatever your issue is, we want to bring you into the tent, and we want to connect your libertarian issue with the greater philosophy of liberty. That is how we build a foundation that lasts for our party. That's how we get new members, new enthusiasm. That's how we elect libertarians all over the country. That's how we build our foundation to last. And that's what I'm committed to doing in this party. If I am our nominee, I have metrics of victory other than winning the White House. I want to see how many states can we win or maintain ballot access so libertarians can continue to run in those races all over the country. I want to see how many states can we win major party status that gives us primary access or the increased media attention that we deserve. I want to see how many local libertarians I can get out and knock on doors, just like Ryan Woodcraft in El Paso. I'm going to be out there knocking on doors for him and candidates all over the country because I want to help push them across the finish line to victory. And lastly, I want to double our party's membership and hold it for the next 4 years. I'm committing myself not just to be the candidate through November, but to stay deeply involved in this party, to make sure everybody who clicks I'm interested in Chase knows when their next affiliate meeting is, and if there's not an affiliate where they're at, let's get them started building one. That is how we build our foundation up so we can tear the state down brick by brick. I need your help to get this done. I'm hoping that we have a whole lot of Texas delegates who are ready to shake up the political system, get out there and support Oliver for president at our national convention. If you want to join this movement, the largest number of volunteers, the most miles traveled, the most media earned, and donors in all 50 states plus DC, you go to votechaseoliver.com and join the movement. I'll walk right alongside you and fight for liberty every single day. Thank you.
Thank you. A big round of applause to all of our candidates. Thank you so much. I believe we're going to do meet and greet.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. Much better than I even expected. Thank you, Liz, Chase, Lars, Mike, Michael. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Delegates who are in the room tonight, we are working on getting a list of the delegates who attended this. Be watching your email for an OPA vote email for an exit poll. Thank you so much for being here tonight, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it and as much as I did. And yeah, get all your pictures.
I want to say something.